Welcome everybody to another week of Game Wisdom Live. This is going to be for the week of June 1st, 2017. It has been a tiring week. I got called back for my part-time job, so I'm going to be working for 4 days, including today, tomorrow, and a few next week, which is going to make me a little bit tired, but it's easy money, and I figure every little drop can help. And hi, El Gordo and XP, thanks for joining. I'm still waiting on the news for the future library presentations. I'm assuming that Memorial Day kind of pushed things back, so I sent an email and I'm hoping to hear something back either tomorrow or by next week. But I do have some interesting news. Next Thursday's live chat is actually going to be going a lot earlier in the afternoon because I will be having a developer on. So next Thursday, that is going to be the 8th of June, I'll be hanging out with Jonas Turner, creator of Tormentor X Punisher. We're going to be doing that around 3 p.m. EST. The reason, of course, being that I think he's like 5 or 6 hours ahead, so we can't do things around 9 o'clock our time. We'll be talking about the game, sound design, and of course how Tormentor X Punisher is a family-friendly title that everyone can enjoy. I'm being completely sarcastic there. Parents, do not buy this game for your children. Now, in some interesting news, I don't have a dedicated co-host for this week. James is still out. I'm going to probably get in touch with Rob again if he's watching this live record, see if he would like to come on for more regular things. But I also have another live cast in the works. I'm still waiting to hear back from the developer about it. He actually said he was free next Thursday, which is great because everyone is free on Thursday next week. In some interesting news, I have a few random games I've got from some press keys I'm going to be checking out either later tonight on the regular stream or during the weekend over on YouTube. We have Tokyo 42, which my spotlight video went up today if you're watching this live, yesterday if you're watching this recorded. I'm liking it, but it does have that issue with the isometric camera. I also got my hands on this very interesting game called Monolith, and it is essentially a shmup-like, or a schmoog. It's basically combining shmup and roguelike design into one game, and I'm debating if I want to stream some of it, or just record a spotlight video. It's due out on the 7th, one day before our live stream there, and I only played for like a few minutes today, but I'm definitely liking it. It's not as deep on either end of the genres, but it does provide a very interesting take on it. And for those of you who know about my love of clicker games, I was playing an idle game for like 30 minutes, like zoning out earlier. So I was saying we could turn that into a stream. It could either be considered, an avant-garde look at live streaming a game, or a complete waste of everybody's time. I figure we'll let history decide. But considering we tried that with Command Conquer Tiberium Alliances, I think we know the answer to that. El Gordo is saying, get a key for Sundered. Let's see what we got here. Huh. Oh, from the creators of, I can't pronounce that game. I still have El Gordo shocked from hanging out with me playing Cookie Clicker that night. I'll see if I get a hold of them. Yeah. And I know, El Gordo, you mentioned game Kindergarten, which I was looking at, but I haven't had a chance to really check it out. Now, some other interesting news. There's some really crazy pieces of game industry-related news this week that I want to talk about. And I have a kind of a topic that I want to kind of mull over on the cast, which will be an upcoming critical thought and piece on the site. The first thing was in basically a crazy bit of anti-piracy news. The game, I will make sure I get the name right on this. Was it Rime? Here it is. Rime was released on the PC this past week with de nouveau copy protection, which people were complaining about causing problems with the PC version. So the lead creator, lead designer, he made a post or a news piece wait, I think it was the producer, saying that they would keep the copy protection on for as long as the game would remain uncracked. And then it turned out today that the game was cracked by the pirating or the hacking community. So he's kind of put into that weird position there. But it was also reported, and this was on Polygon, exactly, El Gordo, yeah, got cracked today, that the Denuvo copy protection was causing issues with performance on the PC because it was constantly um, phoning home through the online access and slowing things down. And this is just one of those great cases of two things you do not do as a game developer. You don't tell gamers not to do something, and you don't challenge them. What is going on there? What is. Are you guys going to get me in trouble again? You two. You made my oath match let's play rated R. It pissed off you two. I had to get them to relook at the video. What am I gonna do? But getting back to the topic, so this is just a case of you don't challenge people to pirate your game because they're going to do it, and they will do it very quickly, and they'll be happy to do it. So right now, people are waiting on the forums about whether or not they will actually deliver and remove the copy protection. All right, we'll try that. But it's definitely, again, one of those cases where the again that copy protection is being shown in a negative light, and we've talked about this previously that it's really more of a stopgap measure. There's no game that's going to remain unpirated for long, and especially if you make something that's going to annoy people. Now, on the flip side of that, there is some one interesting news. It was brought to my attention on Twitter earlier today that Clockwork Empires, as you know, is one of my most anticipated games, which sadly not only did not deliver, but led to Gaslamp being closed. That the modding community has been making great strides with essentially I'm not sure what we would call it, a restoration patch, a Phoenix Rising from the Ashes patch for the game. They've been working on this for a while now. I think this was right around the time that, let me see, the experimental patch came out around November of last year. So I think it started like either in November or a little bit after that last year that a modder basically took the game and wanted to try and correct it. And it's been gaining some movement over on the Clockwork Empire's forums. They are up to version 0.9.5. It was last updated, looks like, I think April 20th, according to the posts. And it sounds like they're really having a solid effort at trying to restore Clockwork Empires. Now, I haven't had a chance to download it yet, but if I hear a few more good things about it, I may be so inclined to download, maybe either stream it or do a video on it just to show it off. But that would be very interesting if the mod community can actually, I guess, take the ball and run with it, considering again that Clockwork is no longer with us. We are also about 2 weeks from today from the Darkest Dungeon expansion, so we'll be counting down to that. You bet. Oh, yeah, I heard that they were banning a few games there. Oh, thank you, El Gordo. Don't mess with the project. I will sink it. Exactly. Yeah, we'll wait till it's done and then we'll examine it. In other pieces of news, Nintendo announced the more details regarding their online service. It's been delayed till 2018, and it's going to be costing $20 yearly for online play, voice chat, and I think some kind of virtual console support. They also announced probably one of the craziest things yet, that in order to use voice chat with them, I'm going to pull up this picture here that someone was talking about, you have to get a device, a specific headset that, where is it? Here it is. The headset has to connect one cord to your smartphone, one cord to the Nintendo Switch, and that's how you have to use basically voice chat for the Nintendo Switch. It looks like it's a Hori headset there, and that looks terrible. I think that that is just another one of those, I think, Nintendo being Nintendo moments of, why sometimes thinking outside the box is not always wise. And I just can't imagine trying to use something like that. For one thing, you're basically tethering voice chat to three separate devices. It's going to lock out anyone who doesn't have a smartphone on hand. And I just can't see the practicality of something like this. Now, they still have about a year, so who knows if things will change going forward. But oh man, Nintendo is making very, very slow strides towards online connectivity when it comes to the Switch. In VR news, it was announced that the Star Trek Bridge Crew game came out earlier this week, which is basically you're using VR and you're simulating running the bridge of one of the, I think, a new ship in the Star Trek universe. So for Star Trek fans, that is definitely key. For people like me who are okay with Star Trek but don't really have interest in VR, it's just meh news for us. Now, speaking of more meh news, Friday the 13th was released last week and has been getting hit hard with negative backlash regarding online issues and I think losing saves and all manner of problems. And I actually tried to get in touch with the developers, and apparently they're not answering their press email, which is always great. But it's definitely one of those really weird. Oh, I'm sorry, it came out May 26th. But unfortunately, it looks like Gun Media is learning the harsh way one of the biggest lessons when it comes to online games. You really want day one to be as bug free as possible. Because nothing kills an online game faster than launch issues, database issues, and everything like that. And it leads into a negative feedback loop of everyone leaving the game, so no one wants to buy because they can't find people to play with, and we start to have basically another evolved situation on our hands. It's also not helping that the game launched at $40, which honestly, that kind of shocked me there, that it was costing so much. Let's see. And they had the issue, of course, of of having a backer exclusive skin that had unique gameplay to it. Apparently, one of the Jason skins comes with like a special fatality. And oh my god. Hold on, I just gotta read this for a second. So, they're going to. Oh, jeez. Oh boy. So even though people requested it, they are not going to be selling the backer skin in any way, shape, or form. And that kind of sucks. Oh man. Let's see. Mm-mm-mm. That is always that kind of issue whenever there is backer exclusive content. And like we talked about earlier, it is a really big catch 22. It's great in order to motivate people, but then you're going to piss those off who find their game is only going to be 95 or 98% complete. And that goes double when it has exclusive gameplay repercussions, be it like a different ship type, different kill animation, just anything gameplay related. With the Darkest Dungeon, while they did have some backlash, at least the skin was just cosmetic. It didn't give the character a different skills for their guns or different trinkets, stuff like that. I guess for those of you watching this live or recorded, What do you think about backer exclusive content? I know we've talked about this many times before, but again, it's always that risk versus reward. Well, I take a quick sip of water too. Speaking about Kickstarter, I've been hearing some things about BattleTech. This was the Kickstarter take on the what was it, MechWarrior universe. I believe they are entering private beta for people who backed it on Kickstarter, and a few of my friends have been trying it out, and that looks very interesting. I spoke with one of the developers from Harebrained Schemes, I think like a year and a half ago. This was like just around the time that the Kickstarter was wrapping up, and it's definitely sounding good. Hopefully, I can get a press copy or at least have a chance to talk to them closer to the release. Let's see if there's any other news about it here. Yeah, so it's the backer beta right now. Yeah, and I think that's a fair point, XP, that if someone's risking their money on an untested concept, it is great to give them something interesting. But yeah, I do stand that I think it's better, it's safer, I think, in the long run to keep it as cosmetic. Such as, again, like a custom skin, maybe a custom portrait, something that is unique enough to make it stand out, but not gameplay enough that it's going to be seen as, you're not getting your completed game. It's kind of what we were talking about with pre-order bonuses and having content remain exclusive as for pre-orders only or in the super deluxe fancy edition. It always annoys people like that when you can't purchase something anymore. At least again with cosmetic, it's not going to change how the game is played. So with BattleTech, also I heard some good news for the game At the Gates. I think we talked about this last week or the week before, but John Schaefer has reported that he's back to work on it after taking extended, I guess, leave of the game. And he's also currently working at Paradox Software on a new title while balancing that with At the Gates. So I'm hoping we can actually see more of that game, and I can actually get a chance to talk to him again. Because we've had like 2 to 2.5 hour discussions, he and I, on the podcast a few times, and it would be really great to have him on for anything in particular. Now, with that said, I'm going to quickly look up the game here. I think we're going to try and keep this to be a quicker video because I do have to get up early and I do want to stream. But while I'm pulling this up, if I can ever get the search feature working, the topic that I want to talk about... Oh, not Jim Schaefer, John Schaefer. Two different Schaefers. Tim Schaefer's the one with the beard. No, Tim is firmly still at Double Fine. It's always weird. I can't find that At the Gates anymore by searching for it on Kickstarter. There it is. Oh, John Schaefer's At the Gates. I think I said John. I hope I didn't mistakenly say Tim there. I'll chalk it up to me being tired. But yeah, he is back to it. He last made update in May. But yeah, unfortunately, it sounded like a combination of medical issues and him just getting completely burned out on the game, sadly. And that's always that risk, especially when you have a long-term game like that. Because I think when we last spoke, he started this Kickstarter. That was... When was it started? Oh, it was eventually supposed to come out in June of 2014. And it's still 2017. It's not even in beta yet. Hopefully I can win it back with some game footage later tonight. But getting back to the topic at hand, I was talking about this on Twitter earlier. And I was thinking more about tutorial design. This is going to be an upcoming critical thought and piece over on Game Wisdom. And I was thinking about the challenges of how much do you tell the player in a tutorial. In the past, I've talked about what you're supposed to explain to the player, the what, the how, and the why. But there's always that debate about how much do you actually reveal to the player in a tutorial. And the challenge of this, and what I'll talk about, El Cordo really enjoyed the music for Tormentor. Maybe Jonas can talk about that next week. But there's a very wide line between making a tutorial that is so quick but doesn't give anyone any information and making something that's so long and drawn out that it just overwhelms someone. And I asked on Twitter about examples of really good tutorials. And what's very interesting is that the examples that people brought up were of the passive variety. Something like Demon Souls or Dark Souls, where you're running through the level and the tutorials are more optional, or something more passive and organic like Half-Life, and what I heard from Prey, which I haven't played yet. But it's very rare to hear like anyone actually praise a tutorial, because it is one of those things that for a lot of expert players they tend to ignore for the most part, especially when it's of the hey listen variety of Zelda and spending far too long on the basics. Now, organic tutorial design, again, feeding or building the levels around teaching the player, is a very challenging way of designing a tutorial. But it's very hard also to design a guided tutorial. I know I've brought up this example many times of the strategy genre. Again, games like Civilization, Stellaris, Total War, and the like have always had trouble with creating a tutorial that can actually teach someone how to play the game without basically playing the game for them. Nice. And I know for me, I've bounced off of tutorials like those in the Total War series, especially that of Europa Universalis. Another really good example of tutorial that I just completely whiffed on was EYE Divine Cybernancy. Let me make sure I got that name right too. That was a fun one. Yeah, it was right. I Divine Cybermancy. Now that's a title for you. That was a game that tutorial was all done using video clips instead of an actual tutorial. And that's one of the big lessons when it comes to tutorial design. There has to be an actual tutorial to your game, or people are just going to bounce off of that. I mean, that's always good. It's always ideal to have a tutorial something, especially when you're introducing new elements to your game. And the reason for this was a developer I was following made a post on Twitter earlier this week about how they were confused that people weren't understanding a simple part of their game, and they figured they had to make a tutorial lesson for it. And that's always the very interesting part about game design. I know we have certainly spoken about this at length, but there's always that divide between the designer and the consumer. And that reminds me of another game, actually, Little Gordo, that it taught you based on the order of what you found, and I cannot remember off the top of my head. But one of the things we've talked to is that just because you find something easy as a designer doesn't mean the community will. And this is where the importance of playtesting comes in, especially if you design esoteric or unique rules that are completely unique to your title. So this would be something that someone would have no pre-existing knowledge of how it would work. And we typically see things in like strategy games, or especially indie games that try for some kind of unique game design mechanic or unique game system. And it's kind of, again, that it's one of those things that you have to keep playtesting on. And I was thinking about the game, like something like Renowned Explorers would be an interesting case on that. Oh, so that's why people keep talking about mimics. Every one of my Twitter feeds been like making jokes about mimics attacking you. I was going, wait, are people playing Dark Souls again? So it was Prey this whole time. But like something like Renowned Explorers, like this would be a case where like the tutorial teaches you the general play, but it doesn't really give you the advanced tactics or the technical play of picking a team. And that is one of the hardest aspects of tutorials, is how far do you go in teaching someone advanced maneuvers? Oh, nice. Takes you of any... oh, that's lovely. Oh, good. It's great that more developers are figuring out ways to freak people out with mimic enemies. It's not just for roguelikes anymore. Mm. Yep, just like the chess in Dark Souls. Or you just smack everything just to be on the safe side. Like what we did in Condemn with the mannequin level. You don't get scared, you just smack every mannequin with a blunt instrument and see what happens. And and this is one of those big questions I want to ask you guys about, and I'll probably bring this up again on the critical thought. When it comes to high level play or technical mastery of a title, be it stuff like understanding the philosophy of designing a deck in a CCG, advanced maneuvers in advanced combo maneuvers in fighting games, or advanced decision making in strategy games. How much do you think a designer should tell the player about these? Because again, there's also defense of letting players figure things out on their own. Don't spelling out exactly A to Z, but kind of giving the player enough to lead them to these conclusions on their own. But then again, you run the risk of the player trying to figure something out and they go somewhere over there and they never figure out and they get frustrated. Hmm. Yeah. I wonder, I guess here's a question for you, Ogoto, since you played Prey, obviously. Do they introduce the Mimic like in a self contained situation, like the first time you run into it? Or is it just like a random situation? The manual. Sadly, the manual is a relic of a bygone era when it comes to games. No matter how much I love the Blizzard manuals, and even like the old school stuff, I know there are fans of the flight simulator genre who I think like one of the older flight sims just like gave you like a binder of notes to read on how to play it, or something like Shenzhen IO when Zach gave you the actual manual to the game. Uh, And that's important too. If you're going to give the player like a unique rule consideration, it's always great to give it to them in a closed environment. Portal, again, that kind of organic level design being very key there. As we did in the dissecting design on Portal, each new mechanic is introduced in its own basically sectioned off area. So you learn about how to shoot one portal, then you learn how to walk through it, then you learn how physics work. Then you get the second portal. And it's all done in a way so that you're basically giving the player the building blocks. And when it came to Portal, of course, once you got to the end, you basically master the game, and then they just ask you to now kind of run with all the mechanics from there. But it would be a different story, obviously, if they basically introduce the mechanics and then give you an extreme test on before you even try to use it. And it's always great when you have something esoteric like that to run it through an environment that you're just using it. And we can see examples of that in classic games as well, especially like Mega Man and the original Mario, where the environmental obstacles are always introduced one at a time, and it's basically done in a way that the first time you're never penalized for it. And then after that, they may throw in an enemy, and then they throw in the death pits, and then they go crazy with the variety of obstacles and so on. Hmm. Yeah, and it is definitely, as we've talked about with organic level design, it is certainly masterclass design to be able to design a game that basically teaches you as you go along. And there are only very few examples of that in the industry. Again, when you talk about Half-Life, sounds like Prey does it to some extent. We could argue that like the Souls series does it as well, but the Souls games, it's kind of more of like a non-linear tutorial because you're free to ignore it or follow all the little notes as you see fit. Hmm. Now, speaking about like Prey and stuff like that, I heard that a few people from Bioshock who worked on Bioshock just released a game, or it is coming out soon. Was it Perception? Now I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. Let's see. Let's check the new releases. I'm hearing so about Tekken 7 as well. Nope, no, it's not that. So many games. Oh, it's a VR game? Well, I guess we are certainly seeing more VR as time goes on. Let's see. Is there new releases? Ultimate Epic Battle Simulator. I heard people talking about that, but didn't really see much of an interest in grabbing that one. Oh, here it is, Perception. Oh, I thought I was close. Doesn't look like it requires VR. It probably can use it. First person horror, blind heroine. Interesting. It's kind of that actually takes me to a point that I was thinking about. We haven't seen too many games. VR is what 3D was in the 90s. Yeah, I would agree with that right now. Again, it's still in that rough period where you really need to knock it out of the park. Otherwise, it's just going to be more of a gimmick. And again, we were talking about this or late 2016 that this is going to be the telling year as to how VR is going to do in the market and whether it will just be a fad or if it will become more adopted by the game industry. But getting back to my point, I was reading more people talk about like accessibility and handicap when it comes to video games, and it's kind of interesting that we haven't seen more games explore protagonists. Wow, I think I just messed up there. Protagonists who are handicapped in some way. Like with The Surge, for instance, you start out with your main character is in a wheelchair, but then that's never really referenced again until the very end. There's been a few indie games that have dealt with characters who are blind. There was this game that was released a few years ago. I cannot remember the name for the life of me, where the main character suffered from chronic pain or some kind of disease that causes them to be in constant pain all the time. And again, it's one of those things that it's mainly set up as a framing tool, and then it never really gets referenced further in. But it would be interesting to see more games that dealt with protagonists who are handicapped or disabled and then have that kind of infer on the experience. Like what we're seeing in the independent genre with this character who is blind. Although I wonder if it looks like it's like sonar. So it's like they're going for like the Daredevil thing. Horror games use pills to deal with hallucinations. Yeah, I think I tried one like those low quality horror games that dealt with that. Oh, the character had I can't remember the name of it. I forget what disease he had. No, epilepsy. There we go. And you had to take pills to control it. But there's always that downside or that risk of you making it so that it's always seen as so much of a deterrent that it becomes frustrating to play. Like if you're playing a horror game where the main character suffers from, let's say, vertigo, and you're being chased by the killer, then all of a sudden your character gets dizzy, and then you get caught up and you're killed, and there's nothing you can do about it. But for those of you watching, either live or recorded, are there any other examples of games either out or upcoming that have dealt with characters who suffer from disabilities, and have that be a central to the game design or to the foundation of the mechanics? Now, another game that I've been playing lately that I was trying to get some footage of it last night on Twitch that crashed was The Long Journey Home, which is kind of like I thought it was more like Star Control, but it doesn't seem to be scratching that itch for me. It feels more like a survival game rather than like the exploration I was looking for. I know there's been complaints about it over on Steam. I think Polygon gave it a poor review as well. But when it comes to those kinds of games, I was really hoping for more of like that kind of progression model of exploring the planets. Yeah, that's true. Blind people represented with sonar power. Yeah, more about people being able to see without the conventional means. Yeah, it's not. There was like one game that was released in the independent scene where you did play as a blind character and you could only hear the things around you. But that was a very niche experience. And getting back to the long journey home, like one of the things that frustrated me about the game from what I played was it seemed like everything was designed to punish or made the game harder for the player. Like when you start to land on a planet, the lander basically cannot be controlled for 5 seconds, and then during those 5 seconds, it goes like this. It goes like nosedive into the planet's surface. And now, Gord, I think you were watching me when like the heavy gravity, the thing just like my lander just like smashed right down on the planet. I think it caused the character to get a concussion from that. But that's always one of the things that was annoying. And it's what we were talking about with negative feedback loops. That when you design your game around a situation that when you start to lose, it makes you lose more. It's very hard to balance that. As with something like the Darkest Dungeon, we've been talking about Radiant mode and how it's designed to cut down on the grinding and sort of the end game punishment. I have one friend of mine who he completely bounced off of the Darkest Dungeon, hated the game due to that negative feedback loop. And again, it's one of those things that it can just destroy someone's motivation to play, especially when you lose progress. As I always say, that's one of the big killers for me. Let me repeat a fight as many times as I see fit, but don't tell me that the last 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours of play all amount to nothing and I gotta repeat that. Because that will just drive me away from a game so fast. Now, in other news, I know Production Line is coming along. I need to get Cliff Harris back on for a chat because I want to talk to him about that game, especially since I've been, sending him email questions about how it works. And I hope he's not getting tired of them either. And still waiting on Shadowhand. I know I've been saying that every week, but I really want to play that game. And I want to get Jake Burkett on for a live cast because talking to someone about that live, about the challenges of the independent market and surviving for so long, that is a fascinating conversation, especially when we have people on to ask questions and kind of lead that conversation on. Now, in interesting news, I think the YouTube streaming really helped this week because I think we got about almost 74, 75 subscribers in 1 week. And I wonder if the YouTube stream of Neo helped. We are right now sitting at 1,874 subscribers over on YouTube. So we are closing in on 2,000, which means I have to figure out how to put Minecraft in for a dissecting or a piece. So for those of you watching this on Twitch, of course, when we go starting tomorrow night into Sunday, I'll be streaming over on YouTube. And for those of you watching this right now on YouTube, of course, that will be later this evening. So maybe I know I keep getting suggestions of riding the waves of Neo. So maybe I'll do like one night of Neo and then like 2 nights of like random stuff. And we'll see how long it takes for people to get sick of it. And hopefully Team Ninja will put out more DLC sooner than later, because that will really help things out. I'm also going to be posting a first look at Mr. Donovan. If you're watching this recorded right now, it should be going up on Friday. If you're watching this on Twitch, it'll be up on the YouTube channel tomorrow. Very interesting game. It reminds me a lot of that game Folktale that I played a few months ago, which it was trying to be like Hinterland-esque. A 48-hour stream. I don't know if I have that in me. I've been again talking about the endless podcast at some point. Just keep having guests coming, rotating in and out for a stream. Get to 2,000 and then die from a stream. That will be... That's how I'll go. But Folktale has not been doing so well. Oh, jeez. And that's always the risk when you go for a long-term alpha. Josh is young and healthy. I don't know about that. But here's one final question, then we'll start to wrap things up. And this is for everyone watching this. We've talked about early access before, especially when it comes to the risks of going on and the pros. And as we've talked about, the longer you stay on early access, or the earlier into a game's development, the harder it is to maintain that momentum, and more importantly, the harder it is to keep the faith of your consumers. So my question for you guys is this: what do you think is the longest time frame that someone should reasonably be able to keep their game on early access, even if they are continuing to put out content? So this isn't a case of someone stay on early access and they're only releasing updates like once every 6 months. This could be a developer staying on early access for 2-3 years, but they're still doing monthly updates. And that's the interesting point about that. Again, like with Prison Architect, they stay on early access for, I think it was like 36, 48 updates. So it was at least 2 years of early access. And people did not complain about that. I would like to say, I think for this one, I think I agree with you, XP, that when it comes to early access, if the developer can keep doing it and they are continuing to put out content, that I think it's up for game. That if they want to stay on it for a year, 2 years, 3 years, as long as they are actually showing the commitment and there's still money coming in, I say go for it. Because again, as we've talked about, you only get one chance to put your game on 1.0. Once it's out, it's out. And as we've seen with cases like Friday the 13th, No Man's Sky, and probably more that I am forgetting, you really don't want to have a bad launch. Because again, once you have that bad launch, you can't have a do-over. And people are going to remember it for a long time, especially when it's online oriented, and it can doom a title. But of course, there are people who will complain that why are you spending so long on early access? You're greedy, lazy, and all that. But again, like I said, if the developer is showing commitment and every month or every 2 months there's patches coming out, I say go for it. And like something with Clockwork Empires, again, they kind of ran out of money and Steam at the end, and then they tried to do a Hail Mary launch of the game, and it just crashed and burned for them. But yeah, let me see this. And also another big tip, if you are going to do early access, keep updating the game. I mean, keep making updates, I should say. Because if your game is like 2-3 years in development, you don't want people to think where the developer's at for something along those lines. Oh boy. Yeah. And I heard they also ran into an issue. Agree once with me. But and there's also the issue from I heard that they were running into issues with they had to basically redesign their game. And again, as we've talked about, when you have to do a complete redesign, that's never a good sign. Even if it ultimately leads to a better game, it means that you are basically throwing out a lot of the work you've already done. I know when I spoke with Chris Park a few times, they had to sadly change things around for games like A Valley Without Wind, and of course, crap, I always forget the name of that game. Stars Beyond Reach. There you go. Was that it? Yeah. That was their big game that they were working on. They just could never tie it all together, sadly. And it's better to kill a game that is just going on for far too long without much effort than sometimes trying to fit a square peg into a round hole like that. The Rapid Fire? There's a Rapid Fighter? What was that Speaking about rapids, El Gordo, it was either you or someone mentioned a hardcore platformer where you played a bunny rabbit from hell. What the hell was that game called? This is the joys of the independent market, by the way, folks. For those of you watching this, you'll never run out of crazy ideas for video games. Was it? It can't be Overgrowth. Was it? That's the. That is about rabbits fighting. Okay, well, that's a new one on me. But there is a game that someone was telling me about that was like a hardcore platformer. Wait, do I have that game? Why do I have a feeling I have Overgrowth? That someone gave that one to me. What was it? There's another bunny rabbit related game where this is turning into the rapid cast. Now we're just talking about all bunny related games. Speaking of which, here's a tidbit. There is a bunny rabbit in Clay Fighter 63 in the third. I think it was voiced by Jim Cummings too. There is your random bit of trivia for those of you watching this right now. I'm getting some very random emails for games to beta tests on. Oh, I also got this game called. I just got an email about it, remind me. Bokaida Heartfelt Reunion. Kind of like an adventure, open world adventure game that was kind of interesting. It was more of those like passive games, so I haven't had a chance to really sit down and dedicate time to it, but maybe over the weekend. I need to think of a dissecting design. I was actually, while I'm sitting here musing about it, I was thinking about asking my friend, he's been on a few of the videos, Alex, if he would like to join me for a Left 4 Dead dissecting design. Because he and I played Left 4 Dead, oh my goodness, for an eternity. I think that game has my record for the most hours I think I've ever spent on a single game. I think I've spent at least 1,000 hours playing Left 4 Dead, and I think probably like 700 hours playing Left 4 Dead 2. Just love those games, and really a great example of that kind of asymmetrical design in a multiplayer setting. It was what I was really hoping Friday the 13th was going to be about, but I'm not seeing. That was a Wrath of the Dead Rabbit. Oh yeah. Oh no, this was a different game. This was more like of a rabbit from hell. But yeah, there's a game called Hell Yeah, Wrath of the Dead Rabbit. Was that created by Sega? Yeah. Oh, it was published by Sega. My mistake. How the hell did we get on rabbits so much? Then speaking about animal-related games, there was a platform released by Sega where you starred a military elephant who had to save the world, and apparently he had dash powers like Sonic the Hedgehog. Again, I can't make this stuff up even if I tried. Let's see. I know Brigador is due out for either a re-release or an update any day now. I know we did a stream that I even had the developer on for it. Let's see. The Design Bureau update. New intro campaign, complete rebalance. And again, when I spoke to him about the lore of that game, and I always love games that really go all in with their lore, where it's not just a setting to serve the gameplay, but you build, this entire mythology around your game, and then let that infer on the story and design. Here's a game that I'm sure most of you watching this probably didn't play. Solarum Infernal by Cryptic Comic from a few years ago. I really loved the lore building of that game, how like every demonic artifact had like a short story about its existence. And I know I've talked about this, but at some point I would really love. I could always do a dissecting design on Armageddon Empires if I still have that. Because I really love the games from Cryptic Comet, and I'm still dismayed that he got out of the industry after, what was it again? Nuts, I can't remember the name of it. It'll come to me probably at some point. Man, it was a investigation game but with Lovecraft elements. Speaking of which, I also finished The Last Door. El Gordo recommended that to me, I think either on Twitch or on Twitter a few days ago. It was on sale. I liked it. I know that kind of like pixel art style is very diversive, I think, for a lot of people. I know there are so many people who have gone so sick and tired of pixel art, especially when it's like the very low quality, the person's made out of squares and rectangles kind of design. But it never really bothered me that much. The Lovecraft game where you run a dairy? Wait, Daily Chronicle. Was that it? I have a crazy idea. I can go on his website if it's still up. Actually, I'm not even sure if it's still up anymore. Huh? The site is still up. The Occult Chronicles. There we go. Yeah, I really enjoyed his games, but sadly, he is no longer doing things anymore. Ugh, jeez, the last time he made a blog post was February 2015. Ugh. We actually had him on the podcast. It was really great talking to him, and unfortunately, I was like one of his last interviews, and he's no longer doing it anymore. Daily Chronicle. Let's take a look. It's always great. Huh. Interesting. Oh, it's greenlit. Has some negative reviews. Huh. I would love to do a follow-up interview with him, XP, but I don't think he's answering emails anymore. Maybe I'll try just for the hell of it. But yeah, him and Chris Beatrice, I would really love to talk to. I have no idea what Chris is doing anymore. I'm pretty sure Tilted Mill is dead and gone now. But yeah, I would love to have a conversation about city building design. One of my first major pieces for Game Wisdom was a post by Chris Beatrice about city building design. And we actually had like 10 different emails that were like short stories about city building design. Oh my goodness, oh man, I would love to have him on. Especially because Hinterland is one of my favorite niche games. It's a title that whenever let me rephrase that. Basically, if you can combine city building with ARPG design, I want to play your game. So, for anyone watching this right now who is designing a game that has city building and ARPG, get in touch with me, please, because I will play your game. As I was talking about on the Long Journey Home, there are several games that whenever someone says their game is similar to it, it immediately piques my interest. Star Control, Sim Golf, Hinterland, and The World Ends With You. So if anyone combines all four of those games into one super title, that will be my game of the decade. I'm sure it'll be easy, right? We can just throw all those mechanics together and we'll all just work. Yeah, I would agree with you, XP, about that. That'll be really interesting to talk to ex-game designers. But it's always hard to find them. I mean, hell, I mentioned this on Twitter, but I'll say it here. If anyone knows or worked originally at Westwood Studios on the Command & Conquer series, I would really love to talk to you about the work Westwood did and designed Command & Conquer. So if anyone knows someone or is a friend of a friend, please tell them to get in touch with me because that would be a very great cast for me. Again, as someone who grew up loving the Command and Conquer series, I think I have those old manuals around here too. I even bought a Dune too. And I think I got, speaking about pre-orders, I think I have like the pre-order DLC for that, along with Freedom Force. Here's oh my goodness, we are getting late here. Yeah, let's wrap things up in the next minute because I do have some regular streaming to do. But as a quick aside, when I spoke with Joe McDonough, who was one of the people on Freedom Force, he talked about how, despite how great Freedom Force 1 and 2 were, the second game like barely sold at all. I think it sold like 100,000 copies or less, something like crazy like that. And I was speaking to my friend Ken about, and we were both huge fans of it. It just shocked us to the core that Freedom Force 2 sold so horribly, despite how great that game was. Huh. That would actually be another great game to take a look back on as well. Yeah, a lot of great examples of games tonight. But let's wrap things up because we're approaching an hour into the stream. And I won't be able to do too much of a late night stream tonight. So, for those of you watching this live, I'll be back on probably in 15-20 minutes. Maybe we'll do either Tokyo 42 or Monolith. I don't know yet. And for those of you watching this record over on YouTube, thanks so much. If you're new, be sure to like and subscribe. And if you have any suggestions for future games for me to look at or anything like that, definitely get in touch with me. But with that said, if you are new, be sure to check back daily for more discussions here on Game Wisdom. And other than that, I'm going to rest my voice. I'll be back on in a little bit. And like I said, I'll be making an announcement video about this probably early next week for the live cast. But again, be sure to tune in right now. It's planned for Thursday at 3 EST here for my chat with Jones Turner. That will probably be our live cast for the day. So we'll see what happens next week. Until then, have a great night, and I'll catch you all on the stream later tonight. And we'll be talking to you guys over here on YouTube, for those of you watching this recorded, on the stream late Friday night. Until then, see you all then. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and of course share with your friends. It always helps out. For daily posts on all manner of game design and industry topics, check out game-wisdom.com. To support the site and everything that I do, be sure to check out the Patreon campaign. If we can hit goals, it will mean more content for everyone to enjoy, and I'll be able to support myself and my household. If you want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter at GWBycer for updates throughout the day and random thoughts from me. And lastly, you can find me on Twitch right over there at GWBycer for daily streams most nights around 10 Eastern. Thanks again for watching the video, and be sure to check out more great content coming to the Game Wisdom channel real soon.